Welcome to the Freak Show, fellow freaks.
I'm Matthew Brockmeyer.
And I'm Christa Carmen.
And this is
Murder Coaster.
Ladies and gentlemen, what comes to mind when you hear the word tree hugger? Most likely a hippie free spirit and lover of the outdoors, not a deranged, psychopathic killer. But this is what we have today. Matthew Hoffman was obsessed with trees and leaves, spending his days perched on a branch in a tree and his nights sleeping in piles of leaves he brought into his house, to the point where it is said to have become a bizarre sexual fetish that festered in his mind, a condition known as dendrophilia. What blood was to Richard Ramirez, the Sacramento Vampire, trees and leaves were to the sick mind of Matthew Hoffman, the leaf killer. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is his story.
Let's begin. Prologue. House of Leaves. Apple Valley, Ohio, nestled among the hills of Knox County, about an hour northeast of Columbus, is a planned lakeside community established in the early 1970s, built on the promise of leisure and the enduring appeal of the American dream. With its winding roads, wooded lots, and 511-acre lake at its center, Apple Valley offers a retreat from the bustle of modern life, a place where families come to fish, boat, and find a slower rhythm. It is a serene and tranquil setting. But on November 11th, 2010, that tranquility would be broken by a 911 call.
Hey, this is Deputy Schmidl. How can I help you?
This is Valerie Hathorn. I called in last night about Tina Herman being missing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at her house now. I just went into her home because I'm so worried about her. There is blood everywhere.
Okay, so I just got in, and you need to fill me in a little bit, okay? What's going on?
Tina Herman works for me at the Dairy Queen. She did not show up for work yesterday, and we have not been able to locate her or her children for the last, it's been over 24 hours now. I just spoke with...
I'm sorry, ma'am. I need an address. I just need an address.
481 King Beach Drive in Apple Valley.
Okay, just give us a few minutes. Don't go back in the house.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying in the driveway.
Okay, thank you.
Sheriff's deputies arrived at the secluded rural home, surrounded by farmland, to discover a neighbor and close family friend, Stephanie Sprang, was missing as well, and her Jeep was parked in the garage.
Deputies were stunned by what they found in the home. There were smashed doors and signs of great struggles, literally blood everywhere, splashed onto the walls. Large puddles of blood would be found in 2 of the bedrooms and the living room, all with drag marks to where the bodies had been dragged to the bathroom.
The bathroom was like a slaughterhouse. The inside of the tub was completely caked with blood, the edges and sides covered in splashes and drips with blood, making it obvious that bodies had been dragged there and butchered, and that the killer had been wearing gloves.
But what exactly had happened, and to who and by whom, was a mystery, for the house was empty. Everyone was gone. Jill, her daughter Sarah, her son Cody, and her friend Stephanie, all nowhere to be found. Even the family dog, A miniature pincher named Tanner? Were they still alive? Were they wounded? Who did this? It was a true mystery, and the clock was ticking.
After seeing the horrible crime scene, the local sheriff's office concluded they may be in over their heads and wisely called the FBI for assistance.
What happened next is sheer amazing investigation skills. In the garage, they located a bag from Walmart with 2 heavy-duty tarps and a box of industrial-grade trash bags in it, and speculated that the bag may have been brought there by the killer.
In the bag was also the receipt.
You know you're dealing with an idiot killer when they leave a receipt at the murder scene.
Yeah, jeez. Investigators went to the Walmart and watched the surveillance video and identified the suspect buying the tarps, a white man with dark hair wearing a camouflage shirt. He paid with cash, so they were unable to get a name, but they watched parking lot surveillance of him getting in his car, a silver Toyota Yaris.
They gathered information on every male in the county that owned a silver Toyota Yaris, and there was a Matthew Hoffman, who not only matched the suspect's description, but in his driver's license photo was wearing the same exact camouflage shirt as in the surveillance video.
Good job, buddy. Matthew Hoffman lived very close by and was a convicted felon, an arsonist and thief who'd spent prison time in Colorado.
All kinds of weird red flags were popping up. They see he'd had a recent domestic violence allegation, numerous complaints from neighbors, and then he'd oddly had the power to his home turned off.
They get a no-knock search warrant, meaning they just bust the door down with no warning. And the FBI and local sheriffs raid the house, tossing in a flash grenade as they storm in, immediately taking Matthew Hoffman into custody.
Puts up no fight, no resistance, is calm, quiet. And one investigator said he seemed almost relieved.
Inside the house, investigators are greeted with a bizarre scene. There is no furniture in the living room, just a massive, thick bed of leaves covering the floor.
At first, they think the massive pile of leaves may be hiding something, perhaps bodies, and they comb through the mound. But there's nothing in it, just leaves. It's kind of like an X-Files episode, isn't it?
Yeah, very wild.
You know he's just crawling around in there like a little animal, so ugh.
The house is in a weird state of disarray. Sparse, a sleeping bag on the floor, but dirty. The kitchen a mess, dirty plates on the counter. In the freezer, they find 2 dead squirrels.
There's an old suitcase filled with tree climbing gear, ropes and pulleys, spikes to strap on one's ankles. It may seem odd to keep tree climbing gear in an old suitcase, but this is actually an old tradition with tree climbers.
In one room is an indoor marijuana grow that's not in use. The bathroom wall is filled with strange drawings of people and animals, sometimes meshed together.
And the walls of the bathroom are lined with bags of leaves. Not like round trash bags just piled up haphazardly, but rectangular bags stacked in brick-like formation, tight, all the way to the ceiling, covering the windows. It is utterly bizarre.
They go down into the unfinished basement. It's dark, there's no electricity, musty and damp, and they find an area of the wall where the concrete has been broken open, allowing access to the crawl space. And inside, this tiny area filled with leaves, like an animal would build a nest. And on top of the leaves, on a blanket, is 13-year-old Sarah, her wrists and ankles bound in rope, her hands wrapped in duct tape.
Sarah looks up at them and says,
"I'm going to be late for school. Have you seen my dog?"
She was in a state of total shock and disassociation.
Beside her was a prom dress her abductor had laid out, as if getting ready to take her to a dance. Very creepy and strange.
But where are Tina, Cody, and Stephanie? Sarah said she didn't know. but suspected they may be dead, as well as her precious dog.
They interrogate Matthew Hoffman, videotaping it all, which you can watch on YouTube.
It's really weird. For the first 4 hours, he just sits there like he's in a trance. Then, finally, he gives this strange hand gesture, pointing to his heart, and then making a breaking motion, like his heart was broken.
They're desperate to know where Tina, Cody, and Stephanie are, if any of them are alive or possibly wounded. But weird Matthew refuses to say anything. They bring him food, which he eats, and then he begins to open up a little, just a little, talking to them, saying he just woke up and Sarah was in his basement all tied up. He doesn't know how she got there. Saying,
I found her in the house and she was tied up, so I took care of her. I found her on Thursday and I didn't know how she had gotten there, but she told me I had done it. I knew I had done something wrong, but I didn't know what it was, and I was trying to piece things together.
He then tells investigators that the events were coming back to him, that he was remembering body parts stuffed in garbage bags. He then tells them he'll write down the location of the bodies and give it to his lawyer with instructions to hand it over after his death. Then he'll fake an escape and they can shoot and kill him, and will then receive the location from his lawyer.
Obviously, this is something investigators can't agree to, and eventually Matthew asks for a lawyer, ending the interrogation there.
But behind the scenes, the DA is working with the families to agree to have the death penalty taken off the table if Matthew provides the location of the bodies. And once everyone has agreed, they go to Matthew and tell him they will not seek the death penalty if he tells them where the bodies are. And he agrees. There's only one condition.
Matthew tells them that the bodies, including the dog, are inside a tree, a birch tree, and he'll tell them where if they promise to just not hurt the tree.
Investigators are incredulous that he could somehow fit 3 human bodies and a dog in the trunk of a tree, but they go along with it, and he draws them a detailed map to the tree.
The map leads investigators to the Coco Sing Lake and Wildlife Area, about 10 miles away, off Yankee Street, to a massive 70-foot-tall birch tree with an 11.5-foot diameter.
Halfway up the tree, investigators can see a spot where it has rotted and hollowed out, but it was over 30 feet up. How could he possibly have gotten the bodies up there?
About 10 feet into the tree, they see a small knothole and manage to peer into it, shining a flashlight down, and see what does in fact appear to be trash bags down in the base of the tree.
So they chainsaw a square hole in the base of the tree, like a window, and sure enough, find numerous trash bags filled with body parts.
Investigators then break their promise to Matthew and chop the tree down, saying, "We don't manage our forest resources based on negotiations with murder suspects."
Meanwhile, the community, family, and the world wondered, who was this strange Matthew Hoffman?
Chapter 1. Weird Little Matthew.
Matthew Hoffman was born on November 1st, 1980, to Robert and Patricia in Warren, Ohio.
Matthew's mother describes him as obsessed with trees from a very young age. He loved to climb, taking his friends up into trees.
At some point, trees took on some strange symbolism to Matthew, who became a dendrophiliac, an extreme lover of trees. Perhaps the trees took the place of friends in childhood, became strong, supportive parental surrogates, a representation of his existential ties to the earth, giving him a sense of meaning and fulfillment.
A deep love of trees and nature is not uncommon at all, and it has inspired much art, literature, and poetry throughout the ages, inspiring folks like American poet Joyce Kilmer, who wrote in 1914,
I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree.
So Matthew spent his time in trees, a quiet, sulky child, his mind filled with the curled edges of oak leaves, of moss and bark and branches.
His childhood friends said that he was incredibly bright but had no common sense, was stubborn but also impulsive, known to blurt out strange things that made no sense. In a word, Matthew was weird.
One neighbor recalls him being very strange and kind of scary, saying her dog would always bark and growl at him, and he'd just stare blankly back, staring and staring silently at the growling dog. He developed a reputation in the community as a peculiar kid and was a loner with very few friends.
Once, during a parade, as a large flatbed truck carrying a float came by, he ran into the street and under the truck bed, letting it pass over him. Reckless, crazy, dangerous, and impulsive.
When he was 17, his parents divorced, and he moved with his mother to Mount Vernon, and Matthew began acting out. He got caught climbing onto the roof of the school, saying he just wanted to see if he could do it. He put a trampoline by his house and would leap off the roof onto it. He apparently enjoyed heights, part of his fascination with climbing trees.
After graduating high school in 1999, he studied industrial electrical engineering at Knox County Career Center. He worked a string of jobs, never staying long, working in electronics, golf cart mechanic, as a dietary aide.
Family members say he appeared lost and didn't know what to do with his life.
When he turned 19, he moved to Colorado, to Steamboat Springs, a ski resort town, moving in with his grandmother.
Chapter 2: The Rocky Mountains.
Steamboat Springs gained its name from a spring whose gurgling sounded like the chugging of a steamboat. Nearly 7,000 feet in elevation on the western edge of the Continental Divide in northwest Colorado.
Colorado, beautiful state. And I believe somebody here got married at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park.
True story. I did indeed.
Was it spooky?
It was awesome. It's, the hotel is very much worth going to. Spooky. There's a ghost tour that you can do. It's also just beautiful. You know, the herd of elk, the Rocky Mountain National Park. It's great.
And if any of our listeners don't know, that is the location where Stephen King wrote The Shining. Resort towns can be very fun places. One thing I noticed, though, is that Weird Matt didn't ski or snowboard. Most people come to towns like that to snowboard or ski, and living in that community, especially when you're young like that, you're kind of seen as an outsider if you don't snowboard or ski. I've actually been to Steamboat Springs a few times. I know a guy in high school who owns a condo out there. It's painted bright pink inside, and we called it the Pink Palace. I've actually hung out all over Colorado, from Boulder to Breckenridge to Durango. Amazing, lovely, beautiful state.
Matthew gets a job as a plumber's assistant for the Scott Barnes Plumbing Company, working in these high-end condos, and moves out of his grandmother's and to the D-Bar-K Motel, Unit 6, a low-rent place for the resort's workers.
The motel manager says,
There was nothing strange about him in the beginning. He just blended in. But as time went on, he struck me as really strange. He would just stare off into space.
And it's here where weird Matthew Hoffman's sociopathy starts manifesting itself. Instead of communing with nature, climbing into the huge ponderosa pines and Douglas firs, studying the leaves of a Rocky Mountain juniper, and writing poetry about a quaking aspen, he instead turns to crime.
It's said he didn't feel normal, that he thought of himself as an extraordinary being that didn't have to follow the rules of society. Apparently, he began breaking into people's houses. It's said that he wanted to see how other normal people lived.
He's stealing all kinds of weird stuff, bizarre and petty stuff, like the big metal signs that say, "Welcome to Steamboat Springs."
Yeah, he steals welcome signs, which has to be difficult, right? Unbolting those things, they're bulky, heavy, meant to be pretty permanent, and he does this all without anyone seeing him.
He claims that his neighbor, named Freedom, loaned him his truck to steal the signs. I knew a guy named Freedom back in the day. But Freedom claims that he stole his truck, taking it without permission. But now Weird Matthew has got this huge sign in his little apartment, taking up a whole wall.
He's working as a plumber for a company that services the resort's Ridge condominium complex, which is situated right on the ski slope and overlooks Ski Times Square. And since it's summer, the place is mostly empty.
He's sent to replace the garbage disposal in Unit 7, and working there, he realizes the owner is out of state, and he starts just hanging out in the condominium.
He claims it was because he only had antenna TV, like 2 or 3 stations, and the condominium had cable. So he just went there to watch television.
Life before the internet, man. You do crazy shit just to watch cable television.
So Weird Matthew basically just moves into this condominium. He's using the hot tub, eating all the food, sleeping in the bed. He'd later say being in places he didn't belong gave him a strange thrill.
Which is a very creepy form of sociopathy. Ugh. He decides to steal the car that's parked there in the garage and fills it up full of stuff, stealing a stuffed mountain lion. The first thing he takes from this condominium is a stuffed mountain lion, as well as a wooden dresser, a bag of clothing, and a fax machine. Some weird-ass shit to steal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's bizarre. But according to him, he suddenly starts worrying about fingerprints. So on August 29th, 2000, at 3 o'clock in the morning, he dumps 10 gallons of gasoline, 2 5-gallon containers, onto the floor of the condo, walks to the door, tosses in a match, and poof.
It was an 8-unit complex, and 3 of the units were occupied. It's a miracle no one lost their lives. The upstairs units were completely burned down. The bottom units had to be stripped down to their frames to be rebuilt up.
He then drives the stolen car to the center of town and abandons it there, full of all the stolen goods, the stuffed mountain lion staring out the back window, the fax machine on the passenger seat. He just leaves it there. So weird. He then panics and drives back home to Ohio, leaving all his stuff in Colorado.
Chapter 3. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you.
It was the signs that spelled the end for Weird Matthew. Police got a tip that the signs are in his apartment and go there to discover the huge "Welcome to Steamboat Spring" sign.
Authorities realizing he'd skipped town, they track down his grandmother, get his home phone number in Ohio, and call his mom, telling them to have him call them.
And Matthew calls them back the next day and sheepishly admits to stealing the signs, saying he wanted some souvenirs.
The police tell him he had until September 26th to return to Colorado, or they were putting out a warrant for his arrest. Matthew assures them he will come right out, and he does, without consulting a lawyer, without talking to anyone. He just goes out there and gives himself up. This guy is the worst criminal.
It's a small town, and as they're waiting, police realize that Matthew had worked for the Scott Barnes Plumbing Company, which had a maintenance contract with Johnson Shipley Management, who provided plumbers for the Ridge condominiums complex that had burned down.
Matthew Hoffman shows up at the Steamboat Springs Police Department and was questioned first about the signs. Matthew telling them that he just wanted a souvenir as a novelty.
But the questions soon turned to the Ridge condominium, a detective asking him, "Why would your fingerprints be found all over the condo owner's vehicle?"
Matthew stammered, hemmed and hawed, but then, pretty quickly, just confessed to everything. Ended up being charged with 5 counts: arson, breaking and entering, aggravated motor vehicle theft, and theft of property, as well as reckless endangerment.
Matthew went to court and pled guilty, throwing himself on the mercy of the judge, and made an utterly bizarre statement, saying,
"The number one thing that money can't buy is God. Along with God brings love and the beauty of nature. These 2 things are omnivorous and omnipresent in every aspect of our daily routine. So instead of wishing I didn't get caught, I'm going to appreciate fate's decision."
Omnivorous, as in an animal that eats both plants and animals, as opposed to omniscient, which means all-knowing?
Yes, that is what Matthew said.
Okay.
The judge sentenced him to 8 years in prison.
Chapter 4. Prison.
A quote from The Garden by Andrew Marvell. "How vainly men themselves amaze to win the palm, the oak, or bays, and their unincessant labors see, crowned from some single herb or tree, whose short and narrow verged shade does prudently their toils upbraid, with all flowers and all trees do close, to weave the garland of repose."
Matthew was a model prisoner. He completed a victim impact awareness program, became certified in intermediate Microsoft Works. Other prisoners say he rarely spoke, just quietly did his time.
He pleaded for an appeal, his parents and former employers all writing on his behalf, and had 2 years cut off his sentence, and was released in 2007 after serving 6 years.
Chapter 5. Squirrely as hell.
Found lovers cruel as their flame, cut in these trees their mistress's name. Little alas they know or heed how far these beauties hers exceed. Fair trees, wherever star your barks I wound, no name shall but your own be found. And Pan did after Syrinx speed, not as a nymph, but for a reed.
Matthew was released from prison in 2007 and as per the terms of his parole, he moved in with his mother in Mount Vernon, Ohio.
And out of prison, he renewed his love of trees.
Clear the table, cut the grass, doing all I can of the necessary. Clean the attic, stay afloat, try as hard as I can not to fall off the boat. What can I do? What can I say? Hope that we find something new. Caught in the spin of the games that we play. Maybe we find something new.
He learned to be a climber, getting himself a harness and pair of spikes, some climbing ropes, learning all the knots and tricks of the trade. And then he gets himself a job at Fast Eddie's yard maintenance.
I've done tree work before, but I am not a climber. Those guys are crazy. I have a few friends who do it, swinging around at 100, 150 feet up in these giant redwoods with a chainsaw hanging off them and a cobweb of ropes. I would just do swamp work, hauling branches, chipping, cutting down saplings and little trees, sharpening chains, and making sure the ropes didn't get all tangled up. It was funny, my boss, he would lower down a glove on a rope and be like, "Hey, roll me a joint, put it in there for me."
Oh my god, dude, the thought of smoking pot and being in a tree like that that sounds like a nightmare. I feel like, how do you not be so paranoid?
Dude, the chainsaw is like inches from your face because you're up in this tree, strapped to it, and you're cutting down the branches. That's crazy.
No, thank you. But Matthew's doing great, working full-time in the trees, getting lots of fresh air, sunshine, and exercise. He gets a girlfriend named Jennifer Snook. She has an 8-year-old son, and Matthew really likes the feeling of family and became like a father to her son, taking him to sports games or to get hamburgers.
And Matthew's mother loans him $37,500 to buy a house, a white 2-story with an unfinished basement at 49 Columbus Road in Mount Vernon. And Jennifer and her son move in with him.
Neighbors all liked him. The other children in the neighborhood would gather there to play or watch TV, eat popcorn. They had a trampoline. He'd even drive the neighbor's 14-year-old daughter home from the movies. But then he began to change.
Matthew definitely had some form of mental disease, like mild schizophrenia. He suffered delusions, and he grew paranoid. He'd always be locking the door, staring out the windows.
He started thinking Jennifer might be poisoning him, and would at dinner demand she switch plates with him.
That's so strange. Can you imagine sitting down to eat and your partner starts demanding that you switch plates?
It would be utterly bizarre, especially in my household, because my husband eats meat and I'm a vegetarian, so I'd be like, there's something wrong here. He was moody beyond that, acting strange. He'd climb up into trees and perch there for hours, sitting perfectly, staring.
He even put a hammock way up in a tree, would lay there, and he became obsessed with squirrels. Going completely squirrely as hell.
He began trapping squirrels and eating them, even cooking them right on the backyard barbecue, which horrified the neighbors, who actually fed the squirrels and loved them.
You think he was trying to become a squirrel? Ingest their souls?
Yeah, I don't know what the hell he was trying to do. This dude is completely off his rocker.
If you gave it a science fiction edge, it'd be so X-Files. He's becoming a squirrel, filling his house with leaves, laying in them.
Yeah. So strange. Driving the neighbor's daughter home one day, he took a long back roads route that scared her, and the family forbid the kids from driving with him anymore.
He was at a neighborhood party, sitting around a bonfire, and he said to everyone, "This would be a great place to burn a body," freaking them all out.
Neighbors would see him way up in the trees, staring down at them silently, watching them, spying on them.
Dogs in the neighborhood went missing, and it was highly suspected that he had killed them.
Now the neighbors are forbidding their kids to even go near the house, and Matthew's girlfriend Jennifer actually moves out.
When Jennifer returned to pick up some belongings she'd left behind, he attacked her. As she described the incident in her own words in the police report.
We were talking and he got upset and pushed me against a wall. He had his forearm up against my neck and was choking me. I got loose, but he grabbed me again and we tumbled over a chair to the floor. I was fighting to try and get him off me, but he held me on the ground.
As they rolled across the floor fighting, Jennifer was able to struggle free and escape.
She went to the police and filed a report, but ended up not pressing charges.
Matthew was getting so weird and developing such a reputation in the little town that he was fired from his job in October of 2010. His boss, Fast Daddy, saying he'd never disclosed that he was a felon who'd done prison time, and that he'd actually greatly exaggerated his tree trimming experience.
At some point, he buys a huge knife, an SOG Specialty Knives and Tools Jungle Primitive.
It's this massive Rambo knife. One side is serrated, and he also gets himself a blackjack. It's like this old school leather weapon with a big heavy-weighted end used to smack people in the head and knock them out cold.
He starts filling his house with leaves, compulsively raking up bags and bags of them, piling them in his house like a hoarder, removing all the furniture from the living room and filling it with leaves. He turns the electricity off in his house. Like a nocturnal, feral animal, he sleeps all day in a pile of leaves, then scurries out into the night, stalking.
He becomes obsessed with a house in Apple Valley. The house is very secluded, surrounded by forest and farmland. Now, this is exactly like that case of Daniel LaPlante, the boy in the walls. Remember him?
Yeah, it is. And Matthew would deny this, but investigators believe he became obsessed with the 13-year-old girl, Sarah, who lived at the house. Some noting how she looked very similar to his ex-girlfriend.
He began sleeping in the woods outside of the house, climbing up into the surrounding trees to stare down at the family, just like the Tooth Fairy in Red Dragon.
And one thing he notices is that the garage door doesn't shut all the way, has gotten misaligned, and one corner always remains about a foot ajar.
When we have run our passion's heat, love hither makes his best retreat. The gods that mortal beauty chase, still in a tree, did end their race. Apollo hunted Daphne so, only that she might laurel grow. Chapter 6, Sarah.
Honey, put your phone down. I know you've been hurting. This spiral's a lonely road. Take my hand and listen. Maybe one day you'll cross paths, and you both got new perfumes, and the life you used to live is left within that old apartment. Maybe nothing's said and done, and your chest is set on fire, but I promise you there's nothing but a cold-hearted liar.
Sarah Maynard was born in April 1997, 6 weeks premature, only 4.5 pounds. Her father, Larry, saying,
She was so tiny, it seemed incredible that she was alive. She looked so fragile. Sarah changed our world. I was determined to give Sarah the best life possible.
Sarah's parents, Larry Maynard and Tina Herman, met in Columbus, Ohio in 1993, when they were only 15.
They were a couple all through high school, and after graduating got a small apartment together in Columbus. Tina working at Kmart, and Larry painting houses with his grandfather.
Despite her small size, Sarah flourished and was soon a big, healthy toddler. And then her brother Cody was born. Larry says,
He turned into a real live wire, just like his sister. Sarah doted on her baby brother. There was a real bond between those two. They were very kind, and they always shared with others. It was just who they were.
To save money, they all moved into Larry's grandmother's house. And then Larry, feeling the need to provide more, became a long-distance truck driver, a double-edged sword because while he was making a good salary, he was now away from his family for weeks at a time, sometimes even months.
And this caused an inseparable gulf between them. Tina just didn't want to be in a marriage where she only saw her husband a few months out of the year, and Tina moved out. Though it was bitter, and they fought, Larry says, I couldn't stay angry at Tina. She was the first love of my life. She was the mother of my children. There wasn't a mean bone in her body. But the truck driving was just too much for the both of us.
Tina, Sarah, and Cody got an apartment in the town of Hilliard on the west side of Columbus. Sarah was a bright child with a beaming smile. From a young age, everyone said how she was caring and sweet, would go out of her way to comfort or help other children.
Cody started playing junior league football, and Sarah became a cheerleader, as well as a star softball player. Everyone describes them as smiley and happy-go-lucky kids, very supportive, a very loving brother and sister relationship.
Larry remarried and moved to Florida, and Tina hooked up with a guy named Greg Borders, who worked at the Target Distribution Center.
Tina and her new boyfriend Greg and Cody and Sarah then moved to Apple Valley together, to a wonderful house on a large piece of land, a dream come true, as wholesome and American as apple pie.
It was situated in a remote area, surrounded by farmland and forest, with a huge backyard for the kids to play in. And although it was secluded, Tina saw it as an ideal location and a safe environment, because, quote, nothing really bad had ever happened in Apple Valley.
Tina worked at the local Dairy Queen, where she was a beloved employee. The Dairy Queen was more like a community. She became very close friends with her manager, Valerie Haythorne, and soon the family were meeting the neighbors and making friends, like Stephanie Sprang, a 41-year-old mother down the road.
Stephanie was Tina's closest neighbor, and they would go out shopping together and babysit for each other. Stephanie eventually became like one of the family, Aunt Stephanie, and her kids loved Sarah and Cody.
Sarah was 13 now, a pretty girl just starting her teenage years, and Cody was 11. They were both good students, getting great grades, very active in sports. Sarah now one of the stars on the softball team.
But sadly, it just wasn't working out with Tina and Greg. He worked long hours at the Target Distribution Center, which was over an hour away, his shift starting at 6 in the morning, meaning he'd have to leave the house around 4 while everyone was sleeping, then return late, exhausted, and irritable.
At one point, Greg somehow damaged the garage door, knocking it off its track, and it stopped closing completely, one corner always sticking up.
By the summer of 2010, Tina and Greg had decided to split up, and Tina was looking for another place to live, driving about with her friend Stephanie, looking for places to rent. Stephanie would always park in the garage and walk right in, never knocking, part of the family. They'd take Tina's Ford F-150 pickup truck and drive out in the Ohio backroads, looking for a new place for Tina and Sarah and Cody.
And so it was, as summer turned to autumn, and the leaves on the deciduous trees of Apple Valley, Ohio, slowly drained of their emerald color, transforming to yellow and crimson. As October passed, Halloween coming and going, the neighborhoods filled with plastic skeletons and false graveyards, the children dressed as ghouls, and the cold reality of November then set in. The family never realized they were now being stalked by a creature in the trees in the forest across from them.
Chapter 7. A Swinger of Birches. From Robert Frost's poem, Birches. When I see birches bend to left and right, across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them. But swinging doesn't bend them down to stay, as ice storms do. I'd like to go by climbing a birch tree, and climb black branches up a snow-white trunk, toward heaven, till the tree could bear no more, but dipped its top and set me down again. That would be good both going and coming back. One could do worse than be a swinger of birches.
On Tuesday, November 9th, 2010, Matthew Hoffman slept in the woods across from the house in Apple Valley, curled up in his sleeping bag on a thick layer of leaves from the scarlet oaks and black locusts, the eerie cries of a screech owl echoing from the shadows.
He awoke around 4 in the morning when Greg left for work, then dozed off again, waking up when the sun had risen and the big yellow school bus was pulling up to take Sarah and Cody to school.
At 9:30 that morning, Tina left to go grocery shopping and swing by the tanning salon.
With the house now empty, Weird Matthew arose from the forest floor and headed right to the front door of the house, armed with his giant Rambo knife and blackjack. He tried the knob, but it was locked, so he went to where the garage door was partially open. Just a crack.
When you look at the crime scene photos of the garage, one thing you will notice is that a lot of leaves had blown in from that area where the door wouldn't properly shut.
So Matthew dropped to the ground, nestling in among the leaves, and like a leaf, wormed his way into the garage.
From there, he walked up to the locked door that led to the kitchen and boldly kicked it in.
He claims he just wanted to rob the place, though this is doubted by most, as he never took a thing and didn't even have a vehicle. If he was going to rob the place, whatever he'd take, he'd have to carry miles back to his car.
And most thieves are in and out as quickly as possible. Matthew lingered there for hour after hour, just sitting around, as if waiting, which many believe he was.
When he gets to the kitchen, he's overcome with a sense of euphoria being in someone else's house, going through their things. It utterly thrills him.
Such a dangerous sociopath. Not only does he not respect others' belongings and barriers, he's thrilled to defile them. Bad brain chemistry.
Then Tina pulls up in her truck, parks in the driveway, and comes in through the front door, her arms filled with groceries.
Matthew immediately confronts her with the knife, pulls her to the bedroom, and has her lay face down on the bed. And he starts trying to knock her out with the blackjack, hitting her in the back of the head, but it's not working. Instead of being knocked out, she just starts screaming.
That's when Tina's friend Stephanie arrived, pulling her Jeep into the garage, which is something she liked to do for some reason, and seeing the door to the kitchen kicked open and hearing Tina screaming from the bedroom, she rushes upstairs to help her friend.
What exactly happened isn't known. We have Matthew's version, and he's weird Matthew, but it was undoubtedly a scene of absolute horror and chaos.
Some speculate Matthew could have been in the act of stabbing Tina when Stephanie ran to help her friend. Everyone who knew Stephanie said she was fearless, not afraid of confrontation.
Matthew stabs Tina in the back, then leaps to attack Stephanie, who now in a panic runs into Sarah's bedroom. Matthew bursts in and stabs Stephanie in the chest, then races back to stab Tina again, then back to stab Stephanie, hacking at them long after they're dead, literally cutting Tina open.
The family dog, a miniature pinscher named Tanner, is going crazy, so he then kills the dog as well.
He then drags the bodies to the bathroom, leaving long streaks of blood across the carpet. First, he puts Stephanie in the bathtub and begins to dismember her with his knife. As he'd later say in his confession, "I decided to process the bodies and dispose of them inside of a tree that I knew was hollow."
He's in the bathroom, hacking away. He's a hunter and skilled at butchering animals, so he's able to find the joints and slice through the tendons, cutting the bones free at the joint. And he puts the parts in garbage bags and hauls them down to Stephanie's Jeep, leaking blood through the living room as he does.
And that's when the children came home.
When Sarah and Cody open the door, they immediately see blood on the floor from where Matthew had hauled the garbage bags through the living room, and they begin to call out for their mom.
This is so harrowing and horrible. It really breaks my heart. The children knew something was wrong immediately, seeing the blood splatter on the floor as well as the scattered groceries. Tina kept the house immaculate. No one was even allowed to wear their shoes inside. In fact, Cody had gone to the sofa to take his shoes off, when suddenly Matthew comes tearing into the room, completely drenched in blood, brandishing his crazy Rambo knife.
It's total pandemonium. Sarah, screeching, races up into her room, while Cody runs for the front door.
Matthew grabs Cody and slams the knife into the back of his head, sinking it through his skull and into his brain, killing him instantly.
Sarah slams her bedroom door shut and locks it, then rummages for her phone to call 911.
She finds the phone, turns it on, and just as she is about to dial the number, Matthew comes bursting through the door, slapping the phone from her hand.
But he doesn't kill her. Instead, he cuts the electrical wiring off a fan and binds her hands together, telling her he'll kill her if she makes a sound.
He gags her and blindfolds her, tosses her over his shoulder, carries her down into the basement, where he ties her to an old sled and puts a pillowcase over her head. He then hauls her back into the kitchen and leaves her bound on the floor for hours as he continues to dismember the bodies in the bathtub, now including the body of her little brother, Cody.
Sarah, lying bound on the kitchen floor, can hear him going up and down the stairs and out into the garage and back, and has no idea what he's doing. One thing that kept running through her head was that the dog should have been barking, and she wondered if it had gotten out or if the intruder had killed it.
Eventually, Matthew picks Sarah up and puts her into Stephanie's Jeep, laying her down and covering her with a blanket, packing the trash bags of body parts around her. He drives her to a community baseball field, then leaves on foot to get his Toyota, drives back, loads Sarah up, and drives to his house, covertly carrying her inside and putting her in the bathroom with all the weird drawings on the walls and the bags of leaves stacked to the ceiling, covering the windows.
He puts a pair of gloves on Sarah, binds her wrists and ankles with some of his climbing rope, then wraps her hands in duct tape, leaving her on the bathroom floor.
He grabs his tree climbing gear, then drives to a Walmart and buys the tarps and trash bags, as well as a turkey sandwich and a Halloween t-shirt, orange, with a grinning black jack-o'-lantern, on sale for just $1, since Halloween had now passed.
Apparently, he had a lot of blood on him, and people have wondered how the cashier didn't notice. But it was deer hunting season, and he was dressed like a hunter in a rural area.
It is now midnight as Matthew Hoffman gets in his silver Toyota Yaris and drives out Waterford Road to the Kokosing Lake and Wildlife Area. The forest quiet, the moon a waxing crescent, giving a dim light as he parks on Yankee Street and walks to the massive, hollowed-out birch tree.
He uses his arborist slingshot to propel his throw bag and throw line up over an upper branch, then attaches his climbing line with a clove hitch, hauling the thick double-braid arborist rope over the limb. He then puts on his harness and spikes and climbs up, up, up to the rotten hole.
By the time he's hauling the first bag of body parts up, using a taut line hitch to secure the bag, it's 2:30 in the morning, and it takes him hours to finish the job, climbing back down for each bag, then using his climbing gear to scale back up the massive birch, dropping the bags of body parts down to the hollow of the tree, where they land in the darkness with a soft thud.
When he's finished this morbid task, dawn is infiltrating the darkness of the night sky with the pink and amber of the rising sun. He then drives back to Tina's house, putting the Walmart bag in the garage where it will be found by investigators.
He's just incredibly brazen and completely disorganized. He's constantly getting in and out of different cars and walking, and it is by complete luck that Greg just happened to have stayed at a friend's house after getting off work that night so that they could play golf in the morning. And that Greg wasn't there. It's just complete luck. Crazy.
He then parks Stephanie's Jeep back in the garage and loads up 2 5-gallon gas containers into Tina's pickup truck, driving off with the plan of getting some gasoline to set the house on fire. But he can't drive a stick, keeps stalling and grinding gears. And not wanting to be pulled over as he jerks about, he eventually abandons the pickup truck near Kenyon College, walks back to his own Toyota Yaris on Gap Trail.
It's a nearly 5-mile walk, and by the time he gets to his Toyota, the sun has fully risen, and he's exhausted. This crazy killing spree now going on for over 24 hours. So he drives his own vehicle back to his house, where Sarah is still sitting, tied up in that strange bathroom.
He takes Sarah out of the bathroom, and at this point, she notices the leaves everywhere, blanketing the floors, bagged and stacked to the ceiling. And she asks him, "Why are there so many leaves in the house?"
"I use them to keep my house warm," Matthew tells her. "They're insulation."
She asks him if he killed her mother and brother, and he says no. She then asks about her dog, and he says he let it out of the house and it ran off. But she doesn't believe him.
Sarah is starving at this point, and she asks for something to eat. And he tells her he has some squirrels in the freezer he could fry up for her. Disgusted, she declines. He then gets her some cereal, but the milk is bad, and she can only manage to eat a few bites.
Chapter 8. Tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones.
I so green you swear that gardens growing in there, and how I'd wish to be among the vegetation. Break my back to harvest even Your candid fleeting glances, getting lost for hours, tangled in your branches. I want for nothing but the flora budding freely, to lay beneath the gorgeous willow trees are weeping. There must be something in the water, there must be something in the sunshine, to put that color in your eyes. There must be something in the water, there must be something in the sunshine, to put that color in your eyes. Eyes so green you'd swear there's gardens growing in them, and I give all my best years.
When Tina didn't show up for work at the Dairy Queen on Wednesday evening, her friend and manager Valerie Haythorne called the sheriffs and asked for a wellness check, which they dutifully performed at 8 that night.
The deputy noticed there was no vehicle in the driveway and the lights were out. After ringing the doorbell and knocking, not seeing anything amiss, and not having a search warrant, he left.
But he later came back that night, just before midnight, and noticed that now there was a pickup truck in the driveway and the lights were on. And he figured the owners must have returned for the night and everything was fine and left.
So Matthew is just missing the police, like a crazy game of tag or capture the flag or something, just passing each other by in the night. But he would eventually get noticed.
On Thursday, after sleeping all day, at 6:30 p.m., he decided to drive his Toyota back to Tina's pickup truck that he abandoned by Kensington College to retrieve the gas cans in the back. When at the same time, a sheriff's deputy saw the pickup truck and recognized that it belonged to a missing woman and approached Matthew, asking him what he was doing. And Matthew said he was waiting for his girlfriend, Sarah.
It's so creepy that Matthew used the name Sarah, but he handed the deputy his license, was very cooperative, and having no reason to detain him or suspect anything, the deputy let him go.
Meanwhile, Tina's manager, Valerie, had entered the house, seen all the blood, called the police, and they were then informed that children had not been in school that day, and that the neighbor, Stephanie, whose Jeep was parked in the garage, was also missing.
The immediate suspect was Tina's boyfriend, Greg, who just happened to be spending the night out of town. But he soon arrived home from golfing, and police were quickly able to confirm his alibi.
The FBI were called in, and the hunt was on.
Back at the House of Leaves on Columbia Avenue, Matthew led Sarah down into the dark basement, to the hidden crawl space in the concrete, securing her there atop a thick bed of leaves, and laid the prom dress out beside her.
Matthew then stepped back and disappeared into the darkness. But she says she could sense his presence there in the shadows, and squinting, she could just make him out, looming above her, just staring in that weird way he had. So terrifying.
Matthew then started a fire in the backyard and drank a bottle of wine while burning his shoes and other evidence. And realizing he'd left his sleeping bag and backpack in the woods across from the house in Apple Valley, he loaded up his bicycle into his Toyota and took off.
And in that weird, complicated way he does everything, he parked his car in a parking lot, then rode his bike a few miles, stashed the bike, then proceeded on foot through the dark woods to the forlorn house of horrors that was now a beehive of activity, swarming with cops, spotlights, swirling red and blue emergency lights.
Matthew watched as the police came and went, the area wrapped in crime tape, feeling surges of power ripple through his madness. He rummaged through the backpack, just taking his baseball cap and a pocket knife, leaving the rest, including his sleeping bag, a headlamp, camouflage makeup, candy, and a camouflage jacket, then left.
And why just take the knife and hat and leave everything else laying there across from the house? We don't know.
He hiked back through the woods to his bicycle as the sun crested the horizon and rose, spreading light and warmth. He pedaled back to his Toyota and then drove home, his actions making no sense at all.
Chapter 9. A Bed of Leaves.
Sarah lay in the darkness, bound atop her bed of leaves, her sense of time completely lost in the windowless basement.
It was cold, but at least the bed of leaves was soft, unlike the hard bathroom floor. She listened as Matthew came and went, again and again, sometimes coming down to the basement to strangely and silently stare at her.
Sarah became determined to not fight him, to try to make friends with him, to make him see her as a person and survive.
When he unbound her legs and sexually assaulted her, she did not resist. She tried to be strong, though she thought what he did to her was disgusting and gross. She was determined to be tough, to be a survivor, and Sarah carried on. Though in the darkness and claustrophobia, during the shock and trauma, her mind began to slip a little, drifting away to a safer place.
On November 13th, the sheriff held a press conference.
Often these things are like just a pack of lies, used to manipulate the public. So first the sheriff thanks the media, and then he asks everyone to pray.
The press asked if the public should be concerned, and the sheriff just said, "People should just use common sense as far as their children go."
What the fuck does that mean? There's a literal psycho killer on the loose, breaking into unsuspecting people's homes and butchering them. Don't you think maybe you should issue a warning? Say, just lock your doors, lock your windows?
Yeah, that's out of control, like irresponsible.
They did that same thing in Idaho. All the college kids that got killed in that house. Afterwards, The cops were like, "There's nothing to worry about. Don't worry about it."
The sheriff lies and says he thinks the missing folks are still alive, though forensics showed that 3 people were most likely mortally wounded in that house. They could see where they had been stabbed, then dragged to the bathtub and butchered, leaving not only blood but fat and tissue behind as well.
He tells the community not to worry because law enforcement is busy checking bank accounts and text messages, which that's just crazy red herring bait for the press. There's nothing to do with anything. Someone asks him about all the blood, and he says, "Well, it was an unusual amount of blood in the house. I can say it was not from someone stubbing their toe or cutting their finger while peeling an apple."
Her reporter asked, "But it's not like an axe murder or anything like that, right?"
And the sheriff lies right through his teeth saying, "Oh, no, it's nothing like that." And dude, it very, very much looked like an axe murder scene. I've seen the crime photos. The amount of blood is insane. But, cops lie all the time. It's perfectly legal for the cops to lie to you, but it is illegal for you to lie to a cop.
Fucking wild. It's 2010, the early days of social media. Facebook has only been open to the public for 5 years. But someone makes a Facebook group, which quickly has 600 members.
And the noose was tightening for sloppy, crazy, weird Matthew, as investigators researched that Walmart receipt and begin putting two and two together.
Back in the House of Leaves, Matthew was beginning to talk to Sarah more. He told her he was holding her for ransom, then got a dictionary and showed her the definition of ransom.
Isn't that weird? He goes and get a dictionary and brings it down to her, points at it. He then told her he'd probably let her go by Christmas.
She says she didn't believe anything he said. He seemed like he was lying, especially when he swore he hadn't killed her dog.
And by now, detectives have a search warrant written up and are having a judge sign it. And then they were raiding that House of Leaves, arresting weird leaf boy Matthew and rescuing young Sarah.
And after days and days of interrogations, eventually, in order to escape the death penalty, Matthew told them about that forlorn and hollow birch tree in the Kokosing Lake and Wildlife area, containing the dismembered remains of Tina Herman, her 11-year-old son Cody Maynard, and her 41-year-old friend Stephanie Sprang, as well as the little dog Tanner.
What's really wild to think about is if he had not told them where those bodies were, they never would have found them. When they first saw the tree, they thought he was fucking with them. They're like, there's no way he could get the bodies all the way up in there. And who knows how long it would have taken for them to be discovered. Probably decades, when the tree would eventually die and topple over, and the remains be discovered, most likely by curious children or a Boy Scout troop. It's always like that. It's like Bella and the Witch Elm. Remember that? We talked about it in our 50-episode spectacular.
Yes, I do. And Weird Matthew eventually wrote a full confession, part of his plea deal to avoid the death penalty, and said in it that Sarah loved her bed of leaves and told him how comfortable it was, and that he bought her Burger King and they ate together while they watched the movie Iron Man and played video games, and that he regularly let her take showers and loaned her his copy of the book Treasure Island to read.
But Sarah says that is all a huge pile of lies. She claims the only food he gave her during her 4-day ordeal was cold cereal with spoiled milk, that she was never allowed to shower, and that they never watched movies together. How could they? The house had no electricity. And even if he'd given her a book, which she denies, she was kept in a windowless basement in a house with no electricity. How could she even have read it? She was kept in darkness for days, and it took a long time for her to get used to sunlight again after being released.
Why did he lie? Like many sociopaths, Matthew felt compelled to manipulate people and was obviously trying to paint himself in a better light, making it all seem like a friendly sleepover. But he wasn't intelligent enough to make his lies stick.
For the murders, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the chance of parole. And if he ever seeks to appeal the sentence, the death penalty will be put back on the table. And though he was already going to prison forever for murder, prosecutors were sure to also charge him with sexual assault. Even though it wouldn't serve to give him any more prison time, they say they wanted it on his prison record that he was a sexual offender who'd assaulted a minor, ensuring his life in prison would not be easy.
Chapter 10. The Aftermath.
I saw clouds roll across the sun. Could have been 100, might have been just one. I heard the thunder, saw drops of acid rain.
Sarah went to live with her father, Larry, and her stepmother, Tracy.
Sadly, they apparently tried to exploit her ordeal, forcing her to appear on the Today Show and the Dr. Phil Show, where she said she was plagued with nightmares.
They then co-wrote a book called The Girl in the Leaves, which I have to say, it really wasn't very well written at all. The narrative is all disjointed. It feels really rushed and exploitative. And when it was time to promote the book, it appears that the traumatized teenager said she didn't want to keep reliving the experience by giving interviews and being paraded about. And her father and stepmother apparently beat her. Her father even threatening to kill her if she didn't make the rounds promoting the book.
What a piece of shit. And in May of 2013, just 2.5 years after the incident, and right after the book was released, Sarah's father and stepmother were arrested for assault and domestic abuse. Larry accused of punching Sarah in the back of the head, and Tracy for kicking her down a flight of steps.
Man, this poor girl. Sarah moved in with an unnamed relative, and a protection order was put in place. Sarah's father and stepmother were never allowed to be near her.
After that, Sarah said she just wanted to live her life and stopped giving interviews, fading into anonymity.
But scrolling through Reddit, researching this case, I found a comment from someone who claims that they know her and says that right now she is doing great, that she is very happy, and she's a well-adjusted 28-year-old woman who has put the past behind her, which made me very happy to read.
The local sheriff, David Barber, was deeply affected by the tragedy and left the department 3 years later. And 4 years after that, he took his own life.
This story is so tragic. A lot of these small-town sheriffs are just not equipped to deal with things like this. It's another victim of the leaf killer.
And that is the bizarre story of Matthew Hoffman, the leaf killer. We hope you've enjoyed it.
And do you have a case you'd like us to cover? Let us know at murdercoasterpodcast@gmail.com. That's murdercoasterpodcast@gmail.com. Just drop us a line anytime. Say hi. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week. We're going to do a story with a character named Christa.
Matthew and Christa, up to no good. Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye.